On the 5th anniversary of our marriage, I told Amaya that I would give her a grand wedding. I deeply regretted that I hadn't given her a wedding when we got married back then. However, on the wedding day, she received a text message and rushed away in a hurry. Just as I chased after her, she patted me on the shoulder and comforted me, saying, "Sylvia, there's something very important going on at the company right now. I have to go first." Her lie was so clumsy, but I didn't have the heart to expose her, because I had cancer and didn't have much time left. 01 Amaya didn't know that I had received the message before her. When the WeChat notification sound rang, I opened my phone and saw the words, "Sylvia, I won't bother you in your life anymore. Are you satisfied?" Before I could react, I saw Amaya beside me glance at her phone and then rush out in a panic. She had always been calm and composed. It was the first time I saw her like this. When I got up to chase after her, I bumped into the door frame and my knee hurt terribly. She didn't even look at me, closed the car door, and only left that sentence behind. For this wedding, I had refused the doctor's chemotherapy suggestion. I had wanted to make up for the regret of not giving Amaya a wedding at the end of my life. But it ended up like this. For a moment, I wanted to run away from here immediately. However, looking at those curious eyes around, we weren't a newlywed couple just going through the motions of a wedding. We had carefully considered and invited relatively close people after being married for a few years. There were less than 6 tables of guests in total, all our relatives and friends. Among them were my roommates from school days and good friends from work and life. They had come from far away to satisfy my sentimental heart. I stiffly turned around and greeted them one by one. Finally, after much effort, I managed to settle everyone down. I lay exhausted on the chair, unable to say a word. Then my mother suddenly called and scolded me, "Do you have a heart? Your brother is dying, and you still have the mood to hold a wedding." I didn't even have the strength to stand up and calmly listen to her venting. It took me a while to understand clearly that Bo had a depression attack and cut his wrists on the roof of the school building. With great difficulty, I found my voice and said, "Hasn't the bride already gone to save him? What else do you want me to do? Kill me to vent his anger? Will his illness be cured then?" There was another sentence that I didn't say out loud. "I don't have much time left, just a few days. You'll be satisfied soon." But I didn't want them to know. I didn't want to see any of them in my final days. "What are you talking about? Your wife couldn't bear to see it. Your brother who grew up with you is dying, and you don't have any reaction at all. How can you be so cold-blooded?" My mother continued scolding. She didn't know that just now, when I said that sentence, my whole throat felt a burning pain. I endured the cough and hung up the phone. Whenever it came to Bo, I always lost. He could easily take away everything from me. Bo is my uncle's son. After my uncle and aunt died in a car accident, he had been adopted by our family. Since then, I could hear this sentence every day, "Bo is already so pitiful. Why do you still compete with him? Can't you just let him have it?" 02 in the evening, Amaya came back looking exhausted. I was dealing with the wound on my knee. Actually, I was too lazy to deal with it, but it seemed a bit serious. Now, even the slightest inflammation could cause me great pain. She slowly sat down beside me and said, "Sylvia, I'm sorry. Today was really an accident. Please don't be angry with me, okay?" Her eyes looked extremely sincere. If the truth hadn't been right in front of me, I would really have been deceived by such eyes again. "Let's get divorced. I'm so tired." I didn't want to lower my head to continue dealing with the wound. Soon after I wrapped the gauze around it, she suddenly leaned over and hugged me tightly. Perhaps because people who have done something bad are panicked, she seemed a bit flustered and even touched my wound. I hissed in pain, and then she slowly let go of me, squatting in front of me and sincerely saying, "Sylvia, we'll have many anniversaries. Don't just casually say the word divorce. It's really hurtful. Amaya, this afternoon was the last bit of dignity I gave you." I looked her straight in the eyes and said. She was stunned for a moment, and then her expression became extremely panicked. "Sylvia, it's not what you think, really. The situation was so urgent at that time. I had to rush over there, but I didn't dare to tell you directly. I was just afraid that you would misunderstand me." Amaya stuttered for the first time when she spoke. "Amaya, what are you afraid of? Am I that scary? Or are you all afraid that I'll bully Bo and now you're also afraid that I'll bully you?" I was so angry that I laughed. "Sylvia, you're too emotional right now. I don't want to argue with you." She avoided the question and hid in the bathroom to take a shower. I ignored her and went into the study. The moment I closed the door, I felt my hands shaking. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling of the room with my eyes wide open. I always had trouble falling asleep and could only sleep for 3 or 4 hours a day. Actually, I should have woken up long ago. Bo is the son that Amaya holds close to her heart. When I met Amaya, she had already broken up with Bo. She had never shown me a photo of her ex-boyfriend. I only knew that that relationship had made her very sad, but I didn't know that her ex-boyfriend was actually Bo. We both tacitly didn't mention anything about it. Until after I got married to her and went home for the spring festival one year, Bo happened to come back for the holiday too. Bo was there that day, and it was the first time I saw Amaya looking flustered, which made me feel very uneasy. I wanted to ask Amaya about it, but every time I brought up this topic, she would interrupt me by saying that the past wasn't something nice and bringing it up would only make people unhappy. Moreover, after the spring festival, Bo went abroad to study, to learn the violin that he loved. My parents sold our house to support him and moved back to the countryside to live. I couldn't describe how I felt at that time. Because it had always been like this since I was a child. Bo could go to learn expensive music lessons, while I couldn't even afford the tutoring fees. I'll never forget my mother's expression when she knew that Bo was going to continue his studies. She was full of pride and said that she didn't expect there could be a musician in our family. At that time, Amaya was beside me, and she held my hand tightly and said, "In my eyes, my husband is the best." I also had no secrets from her. She could look at my phone whenever she wanted, and I gave her my bank card to keep. She didn't have a good appetite, so I specifically learned how to cook and cooked for her. In the evening, we would hold hands and take a walk together. Those days were simple and pure, and I thought it would always be like this. Then Bo came back. He didn't become a famous musician. Instead, he got severe depression. There were one scar after another on his arms from cutting with a knife. He came to me, looking haggard, and said, "Sylvia, I regret it. Could you give Amaya back to me?" I thought this was so absurd. He was used to the idea that as long as he opened his mouth, I had to give in. I ignored him and just thought he was crazy. He had told me himself that he had been with Amaya before. I still remembered on New Year's Eve that year, there were fireworks blooming everywhere. He said he would go to watch the fireworks with me and pulled me out. Amaya was playing cards with the old people in the house. I was pulled by Bo and kept walking. We walked a long, long way. He pulled me to sit on a bench in a park. He talked about the past on his own and sighed, "Sylvia, I can't believe that such a little kid back then is married now." I was at a loss for words and didn't know what to say. Then he suddenly changed his tone and said, "Sylvia, you've always hated me, right? Say something." I really didn't know what to say. "You hated me so much that you went to marry Amaya just because she used to be my girlfriend." Suddenly, I felt my hands and feet turn cold. He was actually Amaya's ex-boyfriend, and we had only been married for less than a month. Honestly, if I had known that they had been together, I would have stayed as far away from them as possible. But I didn't know. Amaya came into my world. She said how much she liked me and accompanied me through those toughest days. "I didn't know you two had been together." I finally explained. He looked at me and didn't say anything, then walked away on his own. A few days later, he went to pursue his music dream. Before leaving, he sent me a text message, "You've given in to me so many times. I'll let you have this one." I had a big fight with Amaya with this text message in my hand. What did he mean by letting me have it? If Amaya couldn't let go, she could just continue to be with him. Just consider that I had misjudged her. Amaya shouted that it was an undeserved disaster. She took out her phone and showed it to me, saying, "Sylvia, you can't treat me like this. I didn't know your relationship either. What would you have done if you had known our relationship?" "I would have been with you earlier, avoided him when I saw him, and closed my eyes without looking at him." As she said this, she closed her eyes. I was amused by her, and she threw herself into my arms and playfully kissed my cheek. In the following years, Bo indeed didn't appear in our lives, and I almost forgot about this matter, until he finished his studies and came back exhausted both physically and mentally. At that time, Bo complained of being cold every day. Maybe it was also because he came back in winter. My mother was so worried that she got a lot of white hair. I even introduced several doctors I knew to him. Until I saw the way Amaya looked at him, I couldn't deceive myself. How could the look of caring for someone be hidden? I felt as if a steel needle had pierced my heart, and the pain made it hard for me to breathe. I questioned her, and for the first time, she got angry and said, "Enough. Sylvia, he's already like this. Why are you still making a fuss?" That was the first time I escaped. I left her and went home alone. I briefly stopped thinking about this matter. The long relationship and the long companionship made me deceive myself and live in a dream. Later, she went on a business trip to Tibet. When she came back, it was New Year's Day. We went to my parents' house to give gifts together. Without my knowledge, I saw her take out a bag of saffron and hand it to Bo, saying, "I heard from the local people that drinking this will make you not feel cold." Then, under Bo's surprised and touched gaze, she took out a peace amulet and said, "It said that this can also bless people to be safe and smooth." I remained silent the whole time and didn't say anything. I just felt a bit dazed, as if I had gone back many years ago. Every time my parents went out, they would buy a lot of gifts for Bo, while I could only look on eagerly, like a dog begging for pity. On the way home, Amaya came to hold my hand. I kept struggling. Suddenly, I found that she had put a silver ring on my ring finger at some point. I was a bit surprised. She pinched my face and said, "Is our Sylvia jealous?" The saffron was bought by Mom and asked me to give it to him. The peace amulet was taken casually. They said your brother might be haunted by evil spirits, but the ring was chosen by me for a long time. With me around, you'll always be safe. She was always very charming when she said sweet words. Suddenly, I kissed her on the forehead and said, Amaya, let's have a wedding. I've always been sorry for not giving you one. We looked into each other's eyes. At that moment, I really believed that what had happened before was just my illusion and that she loved me. At that moment, I really wanted to tell her. During the time she was on a business trip, my insomnia got worse and I often vomited. When I went to the hospital for an examination and got the diagnosis report, I really couldn't believe it. How could it be possible? I'm still so young and I'm about to leave this world. How could it be possible? I went to several hospitals but all got the same result. I took out my phone and really wanted to tell her, but I couldn't calm down. I couldn't even face myself. I didn't know who to tell or how to say it. The doctor asked me why I didn't come earlier. I said that it had been like this during my college days. I would vomit when I was anxious. When I was in college, because my mother was supporting Bo, she really couldn't afford to give me any money. She only paid my tuition. She sent me messages and called me every day, asking me to work hard, to recognize the situation at home. Sometimes I would receive her messages at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, asking me if I had a part-time job, if I had earned money, and if I could get a scholarship. She said she was very anxious that the family couldn't save any money and didn't know what to do for old age. I asked her why she still supported Bo to learn such expensive music. She angrily scolded me, why are you always so stingy? Why do you keep pestering Bo? Bo finally has an ideal. Shouldn't I support him? What about me? What else do you want? I've already paid for your college education. Do you want to drive me to death? She wanted to let Bo live the life she wanted at the cost of my survival, but she didn't think it was a problem. She would only say, I gave birth to you and raised you. What else do you want? I worried about living expenses every day. How to earn money. How to make my resume look better. How to find a more profitable job. It was at that time that I met Amaya. She comforted me and understood me. Later, she accompanied me to start a business and we traveled around. To save money, we bought standing tickets for more than 20 hours. She bought 2 small stools, and we sat hugging each other. She always said to me, we will definitely live a good life. But now I don't have much time left to live. 04 Amaya didn't know that when I was on my way home on the wedding night and passed by a jewelry store not far away, I suddenly felt that the name was somewhat familiar. Almost as if drawn by some unseen force, I walked in and took the silver ring on my ring finger to ask the salesperson about it. It was a very young girl, and her face flushed a bit as she said, this ring? Well, last Sunday night, just when we were about to close, a lady who had just gotten off the plane rushed in to buy it for her husband in a hurry. She must love her husband very much. Otherwise, why would she be in such a rush? Was she in such a rush because she did something wrong? I murmured softly, not knowing who I was saying it to. She froze in embarrassment. I turned around and left that place. I thought to myself that's why she suddenly bought the ring. When she was almost home, she bought gifts for everyone but forgot about me. Maybe feeling a bit guilty for the trouble, she bought an expensive ring for me. All my feelings of being touched seemed so ridiculous. During those nights, countless times I was scared and wanted to tell her about my illness, wanted to get that little bit of warmth that didn't actually exist. It was just me being sentimental on my own. I lay on the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. Suddenly, the door was opened, and Amaya kissed me on the lips and said, Sylvia, what do I have to do so that you won't overthink? A violent feeling of nausea surged up my throat. I abruptly pushed her away and rushed to the bathroom to vomit violently. She seemed humiliated and said, Sylvia? What are you doing? How could you treat me like this? I ignored her and slumped on the floor. With great difficulty, I regained my strength, stood up, rinsed my face with cold water, and said, let's get divorced. I'm serious. She threw a handkerchief at me and then turned around and said, you're dreaming. I watched her fleeing back. I silently said to myself, you will. 05 I went to the hospital to get a pain-killing injection. I can't even swallow painkillers now. Then I went straight to Bo's hospital. I just sat down beside him. He became so emotionally agitated that it was indescribable. He pulled out the infusion needle by himself, and blood was everywhere. He shouted at me, Sylvia, what on earth are you trying to do? Can't you just leave me alone? I didn't say anything and just quietly peeled an orange. Finally, after much effort, I realized that I couldn't eat it at all. I'm already on a liquid diet now. There were many things I wanted to taste, but I couldn't even do this. I raised my hand and handed it to him, saying, do you want an orange? It should be very sweet. I really wanted to taste it, even if it was sour. However, Bo became even more agitated, knocked the orange out of my hand, and couldn't stop crying. My mother rushed in, carrying the meal she had brought for Bo in her hand. I thought the dishes looked a bit familiar, but I didn't have time to think about it carefully. She raised her hand and slapped me across the face, saying, "What did Bo do to you? Why do you keep pestering him?" That slap made my nose bleed out. I looked at the blood on the floor and didn't say anything. I got up and left the ward. My mother chased after me, wanting to say something. Finally, she grabbed me and said, "Sylvia, what's wrong with you? Are you getting angry? Why have you lost so much weight recently? What's it to you? I'm your mother," she said sternly. "Really? I don't believe it." I smiled at her. As I smiled, tears came to my eyes. I didn't want to talk to her and fled from that place as if escaping. But as long as Amaya didn't sign the divorce papers, I had to keep coming here. "Let's torture each other together." 06 Amaya rushed back. I was having a headache dealing with the porridge that had been cooked until mushy. I tried to swallow a few mouthfuls but vomited them all out. I drank some sugar water and managed to swallow it with great effort. "Sylvia, what on earth are you doing?" She tried her best to suppress her emotions and asked me in a low voice, "Could you cook a bowl of noodles for me?" Amaya was very good at cooking, and the noodles she made were especially delicious. But she hadn't cooked for a long time. I couldn't remember whether it was because she was busy with work or for other reasons. I had been on a liquid diet for many days, sucking food through a straw every day. For some reason, I wanted to eat noodles, the kind that Amaya made. I had been to many restaurants but couldn't find the kind she made. But I knew I couldn't swallow them. It would be nice just to smell them. "He's already like that. Could you please stop going to see him?" she pleaded. Her words stabbed my heart like a knife, making it bleed. "Divorce? If we get divorced, I won't go to see him," I said stubbornly. "You're just being unreasonable." She was so angry that she turned around and left, and the door slammed shut. Amaya once said that she would never regret marrying me. But I regretted it. I also didn't understand why I wanted to get divorced so much. After all, I didn't have many days left. But whenever I thought about those days, I felt so uncomfortable. Do people always change? Why so suddenly? How could she treat me like this? How could she do this to me? Why did I offer my heart to be trampled on? They all like to trample on me. Can't I just stay away now? I kept going to see Bo every day. People who didn't know would really think that we had a deep brotherly bond. Then I finally realized who cooked those meals. Bo looked at me with a provocative look in his eyes and said, "Want to eat?" Amaya made it. I can only eat the food she makes now. For the first time, I almost lost my composure in front of him. Before I even left the hospital, I received a call from Amaya. She said in an irritable tone, "Sylvia, could you please stop making trouble? Bo is a patient. Divorce? If we get divorced, I won't make trouble anymore." I still said the same thing. When I reached the intersection, I really wanted to be hit by a car and die, but suddenly, I thought it wouldn't be fair to others. Everyone has a hard life. I couldn't cause trouble for others by dying. I stepped back, watching the crowd surging and the cars coming and going. My mind was full of the thought that Amaya went to cook for Bo, but I couldn't even have a bowl of noodles made by her. Maybe God heard my inner thoughts, or maybe Bo couldn't hold on any longer. That day, I still went to see Bo. We were arguing at the stairway entrance. I envied that he could breathe smoothly and had plenty of energy when he cursed. My mother called Amaya over. Bo was crying with tears all over his face and said, "I really don't want to see you. Go to hell." I turned to look at Amaya, and my meaning was clear. Bo was so emotionally agitated that he pulled me and lost his balance, almost falling down. Then I saw Amaya rush over in a panic and support him. I rolled down the stairs. There were several pieces of glass placed at the corner. I blocked them with my hands. With a bang sound, the glass shattered. My arm in the white sweater was pierced by the glass, and there were also some on my face. I thought I must have looked extremely disheveled. Amaya rushed down and said in a panicked voice, "How are you? How did this happen?" The blood dyed my sweater red. Amaya wanted to help me up, but I pushed her away and said, "How about getting divorced? If we get divorced, I won't come here anymore. I definitely won't bother you too. Is it okay to get divorced?" 07 I really didn't have much time left. I couldn't afford to waste it. I couldn't wait, and I didn't want to see Bo either. I didn't want to see my mother acting like a mother hen protecting her chick either. I didn't want them to handle everything after I died. What if there really was an afterlife and I ran into them again? Amaya said with a gloomy face, "Do I disgust you so much that you're willing to do such a thing to divorce me? Okay. As you wish." That day was the most relaxing day for me. After getting the wound simply bandaged at the hospital, we went to sign the papers. But we still had to wait for a month. I felt so uncomfortable and tried my best to tell the people at the Civil Affairs Bureau. "Both of us have agreed. Can't we handle it now?" The other person said, "We've been married for several years. Does it matter waiting for just one more month?" "It does matter. I really can't afford to wait for this 1 month. The doctor said I didn't have many days left. I don't know which day it will be." I really can't afford to wait for this 1 month. Amaya's face was extremely gloomy, and she said, Sylvia, are you so impatient to divorce me? I didn't want to see her anymore, not even a glance. I had so few days left. I wanted these few days for myself. I got up and was about to leave. She stopped me and said, we'll divide the property equally. It will take time for the lawyer to divide and allocate it. If you're in such a hurry, you'll lose a lot. There's no need to rush to get divorced right away. Give it all to you. It's all yours. After a pause, I continued, Amaya. Let's never see each other again. I hope you get what you want. Sylvia, don't be so childish. She shouted angrily behind me. I ignored her and bought a plane ticket to Dali. I have a house there. I bought it a year ago. It has a small yard and there's a very big jacaranda tree in the yard. It said that it will bloom a lot of flowers in May and June. At that time, I got a large commission from a project and fell in love with this yard at first sight. Because it was in a remote location, it was very cheap. Fortunately, I hadn't had time to mention this before, so I still had a place to go. A few days after I arrived at the small yard, the severe pain kept me from sleeping. I got up and gave myself a painkilling injection and then I received a call from my mother. She scolded me angrily, are you crazy? Divorcing someone as nice as Amaya? Making room for your beau? Sylvia, what nonsense are you talking about? She said angrily. I'll hang up if there's nothing else. I said calmly, aren't you going to take care of me? You're going to live a good life on your own. Aren't you even going to take care of your own parents? She started crying as she said this. How much money do you want? Do you think I'm that annoying? You came out of my womb. She started chanting non-stop, as if it was a spell, and I was a puppet under this spell. As long as she chanted this spell or something similar, I was supposed to listen to her. I'll hang up if you don't say anything. I said impatiently, 300,000. Give me 300,000. Bo needs to see a doctor and we also need to rent a house. She said tentatively. I'll give you 500,000. I had about 600,000 in hand. The rest would be enough for me to live the remaining days. This money would be enough for her to live on in her old age, but if she wanted to continue supporting Bo, there was nothing I could do. Why are you so generous? I murmured to myself, Mom, do I still owe you? What are you talking about? Haven't I paid it off yet? How much more do I need to pay? What else do I need to do? Sylvia? Sylvia, she called my name uneasily. I'll give you 500,000. Could you please stop being my mother? Could I please not be your son? It wasn't my choice, was it? I can't help it. Could I give you the money? You won't be my mother anymore in the future. After saying that, I hung up the phone. I kept comforting myself that it would be okay. It would be over soon. Everything would be over. The remaining days are mine. I only have these last few days. After hitting a wall many times, I seldom told him about these emotional trifles. Atlas noticed my talent for photography and encouraged. The winter sun shone brightly on my face through the curtains that weren't drawn tightly, and then I realized that it had been daylight for a long time. I propped myself up halfway and pulled the curtains open. The mountains undulated, and the mist and clouds were so beautiful. I would have fewer and fewer chances to see such a beautiful view. I regretted the days that had been wasted. Before I could take a few more looks, my phone rang. I was so annoyed that I wanted to smash it, but my good friend Atlas was coming to see me in a couple of days. I wanted to see him. If I smashed the phone, he wouldn't be able to contact me. I picked up the phone. It was my father calling. Son, your mother's gone crazy. Don't listen to her. Keep the money for yourself, son. Are you okay? Dad, sorry. It's all Dad's fault. It doesn't matter if you get divorced. Where are you now? He, who seldom talked much, said so many things at once, but I didn't feel anything anymore. He's my father, my biological father. He had been doing very hard work all these years to support the whole family, but he had also been watching my situation coldly all along, asking me to understand them, to understand why my mother did what she did. They named me Sylvia, wanting me to understand others' intentions, to be understanding, to be sensible, to be well-behaved, but they never taught me how to know my own intentions. Every day, I didn't know why I was alive. For one goal after another, study hard, give in to Bo, save money for the family, and earn money for the family. Dad. Yes. Dad's listening. I don't owe you anything anymore, right? Son. Son. He kept shouting. I mean, I don't owe you anything anymore, right? I repeated, son. I'm sorry. It's all Dad's fault. It's all Dad's fault. Dad, could you do me a favor? I begged after thinking for a while. Sure. As long as Dad can do it. He suddenly became energetic. Could I please not be your son anymore? He didn't say anything. I only heard his suppressed sobs. I continued, it's too tiring to be your child. I'm really tired. Could I please stop? Please don't contact me anymore, okay? And don't look for me either. We don't owe each other anything anymore. After a long while, he said, "No one will make you suffer anymore. No one will." I hung up the phone and tears wet my face. I had been taught that men should shed blood but not tears. I had never thought that I would have so many tears in my final days. Soon there was another violent cough and vomiting. I fell asleep after being in so much pain that I had no strength left. 08 When I woke up, Atlas was right beside me and his eyes were red. I pretended not to care and said, "Why are you crying? Your brother will go and explore the way for you first. When you reach 100 years old and come down here later, I'll back you up." Before I could finish my words, he punched me in the chest. But then it seemed that he thought of something and didn't dare to put his fist down. He said, "Sylvia, could you be any stupider? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me earlier?" I continued to pretend that it didn't matter and said, "Haven't I told you now?" He ignored me, wiped his tears, and went to make liquid food for me. He was well prepared, as if he knew a lot about it and was even more professional than I was. "How long have you been eating this?" I lowered my head and didn't look at him. "Don't worry about that. I can't remember the days." A big tear dropped onto my quilt. I pretended not to see it and asked, "How many days off do you have this time? The scenery here is so nice. I'll take you around more." "I've resigned," he said calmly. "Are you crazy? Why did you resign? You've worked so hard for so long. Is it all for this? Have you lost your mind? You?" He didn't pay any attention to me at all. He held the bowl and said quickly, "Sylvia, my life won't be affected by these few days. With my abilities, I can go back to work at any time." He said this with his back to me, deliberately trying to sound lighthearted. At that moment, I suddenly felt that my life didn't seem so bad after all. 09 After signing the papers that day, I blocked all of Amaya's contact information. Atlas helped me get the divorce certificate. Atlas told me that Amaya had been asking about me all the time. She kept asking what had happened to me. Atlas ignored her. When he came back and told me about it, I didn't have much of a reaction either. I just said faintly, "I don't want to hear any news about her anymore. I don't want to see her ever again." "Okay. I'll definitely not let her see you." He patted his chest with great determination. My illness was getting worse and worse. I often suffered from pain all night long and couldn't fall asleep. One night, when I couldn't sleep because of the pain again, Atlas rushed in with a pain-killing injection and said, "Does it hurt a lot? You should call me. You should call me, Sylvia." At one point, the pain was so bad that I really wanted to die. I searched online for euthanasia and found that I couldn't even afford to die. Euthanasia in Switzerland costs about 700,000 yuan. Thinking of this, I gave up. One night, I received a call from an unknown number. As soon as I heard it, I knew it was Amaya's voice and I hung up immediately. She sent me a text message saying, "I need to be present in person for the property division. Don't bother me." But suddenly, when I thought about euthanasia and was in such severe pain, I still wanted to give it a try. "Just give me 700,000 yuan, and you can have the rest." "Sylvia, where are you? I want to see you." "I'm sorry. Just let me see you once, okay?" "Forget it. I'd rather die by myself." I blocked this number too. I lay on the bed, and my clothes were soaked with sweat. I lay awake on the bed, feeling the pain clearly. Suddenly, I saw that it was getting light. It seemed that I suddenly had some strength. I changed my clothes. I took a blanket and lay on the rocking chair under the jacaranda tree. The sun rose slowly, and it was a new day. Atlas got up and poured me a glass of water. I could hardly see his face clearly. I tried hard to open my eyes. He walked over slowly, and I could see him clearly. He asked me what I was looking at. "Atlas, the jacaranda tree only blooms in May and June. When it blooms, there are large patches of blue. It should be very beautiful." "Yeah, I really want to see it." Neither of us said anything. I reached out and held his hand and said, "I didn't die in the house. I'm sorry. I didn't leave you anything except this house." He shook his head with his eyes red. When the sun came out, the house was quite warm. I slowly lost consciousness. "Sylvia. Sylvia, after a person dies, they don't care about the things in life anymore. You don't have to care about anything. You belong to yourself now. You're free." His crying was in my ears. "My friend, don't cry. We'll meet again eventually." End of the main text, extra chapter. When I woke up again, my tears had soaked the pillow. It turned out that it was just a dream. I'm not Sylvia. There's no Amaya nor Bo. There's only Julian and Navy, Sylvia's cousin who took over her place. I'm Julian, that hateful heartbreaker who entered a dream to experience my wife's life. The life of that girl who had been treated harshly since childhood and had never received any preference. In the past, she also cried and told me about her family. At that time, I just comforted her calmly. Actually, I wasn't really touched deep in my heart. I grew up in an environment full of love. How could I empathize with her pain? It turns out that there are really things in this world that make people feel so painful that they don't want to live. I finally understood why she didn't want to see me even once before she died. Navy sent another message on WeChat, Julian, those of us who are alive always have to look forward. I've made chicken soup for you. I'm downstairs. I climbed to the top of the building and saw her with no guilt at all and even a look full of expectation for the future. I kind of envied her heartlessness and cold-bloodedness. But why? Why is the world so unfair? I couldn't go on living anymore. I couldn't bear the uncontrollable guilt towards Sylvia every day when I woke up. In a daze, I seemed to see the jacaranda flowers that Sylvia liked blooming quietly. I really wanted to pick one and give it to her. Could she see me just for the sake of the flower? I walked forward. I didn't pick the jacaranda flower and I didn't see Sylvia either. Navy's shrill screams were in my ears, the concrete floor was very hard, and I must have looked horrible. It's okay like this. Anyway, Sylvia didn't want to see me. It doesn't matter what I look like, Sylvia, I won't come to look for you anymore. Don't be called Sylvia in the next life. You don't have to understand anyone's intentions. I'll stop them on the road to the underworld. No one can bother you anymore.